Imagine this. Imagine on your user class, you have a first name field, first name like this, and then you've also got a last name field. So often you'll see this in apps where they separate the first name from the last name. It just allows a little bit more flexibility. So some places you can use the last and sometimes you can use the first, depending on the situation. However, in these scenarios, it becomes very common that we want both of these names combined. And so what you might find yourself doing is something like this. Every single time you spit it out, you're saying $ first name and then $ last name. And you might be repeating that code over and over again. And wouldn't it be nice if you could just say user dot full name, something like that? Well, it turns out we can using accessors, and that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So let's first go to our app.view, double click on that, Control D to grab all of the occurrences, and call this accessors and mutators, because we're also going to talk about mutators in this video. So save that. We'll create a new file in here called accessors and mutators.view. Whack in our template, whack in a div, say test to make sure it's working, and then run yarn serve. Cool, that's up and running. Let's just check that it's all working, and it is. And now if we jump back into our user class, we can have a crack at this. So we've got our first name and our last name, which will be coming through. In order to get the full name, all we have to do is define a getter by saying get, and then we can say full name. And now we just return the full name. So in this case, that's going to be this.first name, and then this.last name. And one thing to notice here is when we're using get like this, or whenever we're using a method directly on the class, so for example, full name like that, whenever we do things that way, this will be equal to the current user. Okay, you might know this already about JavaScript, but this will be equal to the current user. Whereas if we use the word static, then it's not going to refer to the current user, it's going to refer to the user model, so the class itself. All right, so when we're using getters, we can use the word this to pull out the current user. Let's save that, jump back into our accessors and mutators component, and now let's insert a new user. Import him there, come down here and we'll say mounted, hook into that, and we'll insert a user when it's mounted, stuff that we've done before. And then we'll give it an ID of 28. We'll give it a first name of Luke. And then we'll give it a last name of Diebold. Everybody thinks that my name is pronounced Diebold. It looks like it's spelled Diebold, isn't it? What a weird name. But it's actually Diebold. I think it's like Swiss or French or something. Anywho, so we're inserting the user. Now let's actually fetch that user. We'll create a computed property called user, which will return user.find, and we'll grab the user with that ID, which is 28. And remember, when you're calling find, you don't have to say get. So when we're doing queries, we always have to say get at the end. But in this case, there's only going to be one result. So whenever we say find, Vuex ORM knows that it's ready to just pull the data. So let's scroll up and spit that out. User, let's just try first name to begin with. Save that, refresh the page, and Luke comes up. Let's see if our getter works. Last name. Oh, sorry, our getter is full name. Save that, and it works. How cool is that? Now, what about mutators? So for example, what if we wanted this always to be uppercased? Well, what we can do is come back here to our user class, and where it says last name, we can pass through a function here. And that function is going to accept whatever the value of last name is. And now we can actually change that value. So we could say value.to uppercase. And what will happen is last name will come through, be passed through to this function, and that function is called. And so now last name will be an uppercase value. Save that and notice that it is now uppercased. So that's pretty cool. That's mutators. And there's actually another way we can use mutators, which might feel a little bit cleaner. At least it feels cleaner to me. We can add in here static mutators and then return an object in there. And the thing that we want to mutate, so in this case, we want to mutate the last name. And that's going to be a function that will accept the last name value. And now we can do the exact same thing. Return value.toUpperCase. And for me, this is nicer because it means you can keep all your mutators in one place. And it keeps your fields a little bit cleaner. So let's save that, refresh the page, and it still works. So that's pretty cool. But I wanted to show you a bit more of a real world example, an example of a mutator that I use all of the time. And in order to do that, we're going to have to bring in a new package called Moment. And Moment is a package that allows you to deal with dates really easy. It's got a whole bunch of functions that you can use to manipulate dates. So if you're creating something like a calendar app or an app that tends to mess around with dates quite often, this can be really, really helpful. And what we're going to do now is make it so that every single date we receive in the user class is going to be converted to an instance of Moment, meaning we get all of the cool Moment stuff for free. I'll show you what I mean. This is easier to explain with an example. If we say import Moment from Moment, we can now use it inside of this class. We'll scroll down and imagine we have a field here called date born. This dot attribute is equal to null by default. Oop, spelled that wrong. Save it. And now what I'm going to do is insert a JavaScript date into date born. All right. So in order to do that, I'm just going to figure out what it will look like. New date. And I was born in 1991. 1991, March the 28th. And then I can call on that dot to JSON. So that's going to give me a JSON date. There we go. So let's copy this. That's my birth date. Come back in here, jump into our component. And when we create our user, we're going to add the date I was born as well. Date born. There we go. Next, we're going to mutate this date when it comes in. So we go back to our user class. We can say date born. Oh, I'm going to do it up here, actually. Let's do it up here in our mutators. Date born. We're going to accept the date that I was born. And then we're going to return moment, which is going to take in that date. So now, whenever we're dealing with a date, we're going to have a moment object. We're going to be using a moment object. So I can do cool stuff like this. Check it out. Moment dot year. So let's see if we can get the year that I was born. Oh, sorry, not moment. Date born. There we go. So now I can just pull out the year that I was born. We can say, for example, let's add 1 year. And there we go. So there's the date I was born, but we've added 1 year. Let's add 5 years. And there we go. That's added 5 years. So this is really, really cool. Now, date born is a moment object whenever it comes in, and we can do whatever we want with it. This is really awesome and gives us an amazing amount of power. So I use this pattern all of the time in my apps. And it just means that rather than doing something like this, so like calling, I don't know, this dot $moment, because maybe you've got like moment sitting on your instance, and then calling that, and then saying dot add, I don't know, 4 years. See, it starts to get quite ugly quite quickly, and that doesn't look very nice to me. Whereas if we just do it the way we had it before, it's much cleaner, and it makes sense as well, because I always want my dates to be a moment instance. I can always change it back using moment anyway. So that's really cool and a classic example of how I use mutations. So I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it for you. The next video is going to be really exciting because we're going to start digging deeper into queries. So now that we've created every single relationship that you can use with Vuex ORM, we can start diving deeper and having a look at how we can pull out data, manipulate it, move it around, all sorts of stuff like that. It's going to be heaps of fun. I look forward to it. See you in the next video.